don't need introductions. Everybody's been introduced and spoken. I think what we need is reflections on anything that people have learned, been inspired by, think has been left out or gone off track, or been newly energized about working on over the past couple of days here, going forward. You know, closing remarks here. Who's first?
I'd love to hear more from Mr. Jensen about being our own journalist.
Why don't we start with Mr. Jensen and go right down the line and be brief as beyond what's possible, and see if we can get all the way down to Lisa.
Oh, I don't have anything to say about being our own journalist, so I'll say what actually I'd rather say. I think, in part because I think that we all understand there are a variety of new technologies that are very useful in distributing information. That not only social media, but even the traditional media are far more open to us as costs have come down. And I think that in this room there's lots of different research skills that can assemble information. There's people with talents in writing and speaking. I've been thinking more about stepping back, and maybe it's because the historical nature of this gathering, you know, looking at 50 years. The thing that strikes me is that we are organizing on a very different terrain than we've ever organized in the past 50 years. For most of the post-World War II era, organizing from a left progressive point of view went forward with the same assumption that the dominant culture had, which was of endless expansion, of endless bounty. The story of the post-World War II era for both the left and the conventional wisdom was there was going to be more, and what we needed to distribute that more equally. I think the most important change in the last 50 years is that we have to abandon the fantasy of endless expansion and endless bounty. Whatever we do, we're organizing on a landscape in which there is less, much less, less energy especially. And it's a very different thing to go forward organizing and telling people that you want to make this era of endless expansion more fair, more equal, more just, with the assumption that everybody's going to get their share if you enact these progressive policies. That's over. That whole dream is over. We're talking about organizing in a world where everybody is going to have less. And that means not only the wealthy giving up their disproportionate share, but all of us recognizing we are going to give up a tremendous amount, or else there's going to be no future. And that's the thing that's so different for me. In the old days, it was about organizing to change the future. The question now is, will there be a future? And that is not a trivial question. It is not an apocalyptic question. It's an honest question looking at the reality of the data and what we know about it. And I think that in addition to figuring out how to reach others, the left, progressive, whatever you want to call this configuration, has an enormous internal task in front of it, which is coming to terms with that reality, which for the most part I think the movement has not done.
So, 2 minutes, everybody else.
That's a tough act to follow, dude. Yeah, I'm an organizer, so I concern myself with getting people together and building power. Part of what drives me is this sense that, you know, will there be a tomorrow? But I'd like to put that aside and focus on the people and organizing people and base building, which is partly what I talked about. Because it is, I'm often asked, especially as a young organizer, you know, how do we use Facebook? How do we use Twitter? You know, these tools that seemingly are responsible for major political changes recently. And I'd actually challenge that these are tools, are part of a much larger, broader dynamic. That Tahrir Square was certainly not organized in 7 days It took years. And even in the video, she's talking about how much work it took getting posters out, leafleting all over the place, all the different organized sectors of society that heard about this long before YouTube did. And that, it's really tempting to look back at these things and to ascribe the power to the tools instead of the power to the people wielding those tools. And I would challenge us all to not be too infatuated with the tools that are available to us, as powerful as they are, but that the old school still works when we use it. And it's not that it's failing, it's that we're not using it. We're not doing the base building, the power building, the coalition building, and all those wonderful things that actually have affected change. And that's really what I'm interested in, is winning, not necessarily being right. So I hope that as a movement we can all start to concern ourselves with winning and making the changes that are necessary, not only for us to win, but for us to survive.
I think doing all the research on the really toxic Southeast USA and the militarism's assault on the earth was really heavy with me for a long time. It was very difficult work to do. And I know we barely uncovered the truth of it and certainly weren't able to present the impact of it clearly enough. I spent several days just going out to a friend who does market gardening, an organic gardener, and picked tomatoes and picked beans and worked in the fields a little bit. And I think we have to let go. We feel the urgency, but at the same time we have to, I needed to take some time away from that urgency and feel the earth and listen to the rivers and listen to the wooded trails and sit with the earth we are the earth, and we have that responsibility, but we also have to put our ear to the ground as well as put our feet to the streets.
Kind of ditto on how hard it was to dig up all that information, but to kind of uncover this, and it was amazing. One thing I realized was, as difficult as it kind of was to put our PowerPoint together, I'm curious as to the difficulty y'all had in taking it in. And I mean, I've had several comments about like, I never knew this. Well, I'm just thinking, well, everybody knows this, we just put it up there. But it's not there. So that's encouraging to us. I'm going to put this out there. Claire and I can be reached at our organizing email. This is called New South Network @gmail.com, which is not a membership organization, but it's intended to allow people to input across the Southeast primarily. And if there's some feedback that you wanted to give to us about how to improve this and how we can apply it where you live and what's going on in your area, we'd really be interested in that. That's pretty good. Remember earlier we were talking about direct action gets the goods, and action is the antidote to despair. So keep it in there, keep going, and we'll see you at MIC 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you.
And so on and so on. I was very gratified yesterday because I could tell that people were touched by the information I had to share about our extra casualties. And I know that all these good hearts out here were saying, what can I do? How can I help? This is an outrage. We must, all of us, write letters, rag our Congress people, rag the administration, go visit folks at the vet hospitals, be aware that in our neighborhoods, the lady in line behind us at the grocery store may be a caregiver, and to do everything we can to reach out in solidarity with these troops and demand that these war dollars be brought home and applied in good measure to pay back the debt that we owe. And we are all extra casualties. Let us stand in solidarity together.
worn out 4 or 5 of these shirts over the last years. The shirt says, "We will not be silent." And that's what you all are, why you're here. You won't be silent about this military-industrial complex that is running our country. Our being here and learning so much about the various types of corporations that are here and the disaster that they've caused on the earth and on the people that live on the earth is, you know, it's a terrible reminder of what we are living with. But unless we're reminded of it, there's no way we can fix it. So being here and to be a part of this conference has been very, very uplifting, and to know that all of these people are here. The other part of it is that as we organize for these things, and I know this conference has had the same challenge that every other conference, not every other, but most conferences have. How do we reach out to other members of our community? How do we reach out to the communities of color? How do we do that? How do we get them on the panels so that there's a African American on a panel, a Hispanic on a panel, an Asian American on the panel, then they're going to bring their family at least, because they're on a panel, you know? So trying to get in anything that we do and anything we organize to make sure that we get other members of our community, and they may not know piddly squat about the subject. But you know, at this stage, it doesn't matter. The fact that we honor them on the subject that we're trying to talk about, and honor them to come and be on a panel and say, we want your comments from your community. Whether you know much about it or not, just tell us what you think. I think it's really, really important that we offer these opportunities. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be looking just like we are right now, which is Caucasian, with the exception of about 4 people in this audience. You know, so we really do have to make a huge effort to reach out and to bring in all parts of our community. And that's what we'll be doing when we go to Washington for October 6th, to try to bring in all the parts of the community of Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. Thank you.
As I'm used to doing, I want to say ditto to what Ann just said. I want to thank everyone who organized this thing. This is really quite a remarkable feat. And I guess I'm thinking that 2 things that I'd like to pursue would be the University of Virginia here, where 4 of our children went to school at one stage or another. Academe in general, and churches. Academe, that's one problem. But the fact that our institutional churches are running shotgun for the system is unconscionable. And with very few exceptions, nobody can find their voice. And it's so much like the 30s in Germany that it disturbs me greatly. So I'm going to try to keep working on that. Maybe those of you who have communities, churches, synagogues, mosques, can confront people. Because there's one thing I learned since I was in college. I studied a lot of moral theology, okay? When they told me, look, it's very simple. You do good and you avoid evil. But guess what, folks? It's only half right. You do good. But don't avoid evil, you confront evil, okay? And that's what we're trying to do here. I guess the last thing I'll say is I have 8, Rita and I will be married 50 years next month. We have 8 grandchildren, 3 of them right here in Charlottesville. And when I think about why I'm doing this, well, you know, I'm trying to practice what I preach. I do think that the arc of justice does bend. The arc does bend toward justice, and that that has to be a matter of faith right now. And I may not see the results of my efforts, but as the divine Hildegard, Hildegard of Bingham used to say, all will be well, all manner of things will be well.
Well, I have a firm belief that if the people of this country would stop cooperating and lending their support to the military-industrial complex, it would fall tomorrow. The problem is that the people of this country don't know that yet. They're starting to suspect it, perhaps, And I'm going to put in a shameless plug to get feedback for my game idea. I really think that my game could reach out to people that feel very disempowered, very passive, and give them that little spark of the idea, hey, I could make a difference. So if you were here yesterday and you got the half sheet, there was a survey, a link online to give feedback on the game idea. If you didn't get that, see me and I'll give you a link, but I would love to hear your ideas about what's bad about my idea. And thank you, I love you all, this has been great. Thank you.
I never ever in a million years would have guessed it, but these people all spoke less than 2 minutes. If there's a couple of questions for anyone on the stage, please raise your hand.
One speaker, we were hoping to get Gene Sharp. Lisa had mentioned she channeled this about strategy, and I think that's something like long-term and national. I don't know how we need to develop an organization that can put together a strategy that can be effective. And I know this kind of gathering is a good start. With you all.
Anybody want to comment on Gene Sharp strategizing?
I'm just going to say that Gene Sharp is a very older person at this point and probably doesn't travel as much as he used to, but Jamila Rakib is his assistant, is the next in that organization, the Albert Einstein Institute, and I know that she travels extensively and speaks, so that might be a good speaker to have.
Yeah, let's bring him here.
I don't know if you've noticed it yet, but in the hall where we've been eating, there's 3 long sheets of paper that have 198 methods of nonviolent direct action, which we copied off and blew up from one of Gene Sharp's books. And it is pegged to the Albert Einstein Institute, so you can find that list, and it discusses all these tactics and strategies. One thing we noticed is dated from the mid to late 70s, and things are missing, so, add your own. I mean, there's the computer, the internet's not on that list.
We should note also that Gene Sharp, as well as other nonviolent strategists in Europe and this country and elsewhere, were working with people in Egypt and elsewhere for years leading up to Tahrir Square.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and that might do it.
Well, the one might be because it has extra time and you want a belly dance. I won the international contest. It was 30 years ago. Nonetheless, the girl can still move. So if you want a little entertainment, I would be happy to with a little tiny appropriate story to conflict resolution.
Go for it.
But after the next speaker, we will have belly dancing.
We'll consider that as a nonviolent direct action.
Better with a drum.
Number 2.
We can certainly add that to the list, and I just wanted to point out that George Leahy has been working at Swarthmore and has updated the database. He has just released 4 years of research on effective nonviolent civil resistance strategies, and you can download that and add to it if belly dancing might be one of those additions, I don't know. But certainly it's very uplifting to see indexed how nonviolent civil resistance has been effective and has worked over the years. It goes from the start of history to today. So it's a very good database to
What's the website?
You could find it through, I'm sorry, I don't have the site with me. It just came to me yesterday.
If you give it to us, we will put it on mic50.org.
But it's George Leahy at Swarthmore, and it's the research he just completed.
As far as Lisa's exercise, we ran out of time. I wanted to share, there was this, on the topic of communication strategies, we discussed this idea as far as conversion of putting out the road signs amongst the political signs during the primary. You know, you can harvest them and turn them inside out, restaple and stencil, or we could professionally print these signs. And so I'm sort of envisioning at many intersections, whether it's a Democrats or Republican signs, in amongst them having a sign that says, cut military waste, fund community jobs, you know. And so, you know, if we sort of feel shut out, you know, I think there's something about this popular communication, you know, that is kind of inspiring to people. And so I think if we can inject those issues into the election in creative ways like that.
Yeah, good idea. And maybe don't flip them inside out and get charged with vandalism unless you want to, but make your own. And maybe Jobs Not Wars might be a shorter version.
Yeah, sure. Or we could raise a little money and get professionally printed, but we've collected hundreds of them after the primaries are over. I mean, they're just littering the roadsides. So.
Okay. Thank you. So more, one and, no, yes, two. And that will do it, 1 and 2, and then.
Johann Galtung, who is considered one of the founders of peace studies, wrote a book on the fall of the American Empire and then what. And he is predicting that it will fall before 2020. And it'll fall for lots of reasons. And what do we do when it does fall?
Well, does anybody in particular want to take this?
Grow food. Be our #1 job.
Did we lose Helena, who already talked about the benefits of falling empires?
I would just say chop wood and haul water.
Well, he
Party at my place.
You're all invited. The question, of course, is how it falls during that time. It's not something that happens one day, like a volcano exploded. You know, it is falling. It's how it happens, how easily, with how much damage, how much destruction to ourselves and others, and it can be done in a way that benefits absolutely everybody. And I think Helena's description of the British falling of the empire as actually something that benefited everybody is the ideal. There are much uglier scenarios that may be what happened.
Okay. Referring to, this is on a light note, maybe referring to the election sign recycle. For years I've been recycling that big staple that they stand on, and it makes beautiful holders for remade roll covers over your apocalyptic garden.
I want to respond a little bit to Wally, the question. If people were not already aware, there's a global movement called Transition Movement, Transition Town, and it does work toward, you know, what happens. It's not a matter of if, but when this change occurs, and whether it's fast or chaotic or whatever. But it's pretty much targeting the middle, not so much the extremes, but like the broad group of potential allies in the middle of knowing your neighbors and what do they do and how do we do this and what happens when the gas isn't getting there and what do they do when the cell phones get turned off and that kind of stuff. So you can usually find, you can Google Transition Town or Transition Movement, and it's usually done city by city or county by county. That's a good source to help with that question.
In the meantime, let's work on preventing the apocalypse and thanking all of these wonderful speakers for being here for this conference. We have one more coming up right now.